Welcome to Noun Tutorial TV. Like, share and subscribe. NSC203 Human Physiology. 2. Summary. Respiration has major components. 2. Respiration has two major components, namely, a. the transport of oxygen from the outside air to the cells within tissues, and the transport of carbon dioxide from the cells to the outside air. b. the utilization of oxygen within the body cells for the liberation of energy from food substances. The transport of oxygen from the outside air to the cells within tissues, and the transport of carbon dioxide from the cells to the outside air is known as external respiration. The utilization of oxygen within the body cells for the liberation of energy from food substances is called internal or tissue respiration. Internal respiration is also called tissue respiration. The respiratory system is an air pump. The cardiovascular system is a blood pump. From tissues of the body is returned to the right atrium of the heart. Venous blood. Venous from tissues of the body is returned to the right atrium of the heart. Blood. Venous blood from of the body is returned to the right atrium of the heart. Tissues. Venous blood from tissues of the body is returned to the atrium of the heart. Right. Venous blood from tissues of the body is returned to the right of the heart. Atrium. Venous blood from tissues of the body is returned to the right atrium of the heart. The ventricle pumps the blood out of the heart through the pulmonary artery. Right. The right pumps the blood out of the heart through the pulmonary artery. Ventricle. The right ventricle pumps the blood out of the through the pulmonary artery. Heart. The right ventricle pumps the blood out of the heart through the pulmonary artery. The pulmonary arterial trunk divides into the right and left pulmonary arteries, and these supply blood to the right and left lungs. The divides several times just like the trachea until the pulmonary capillaries are formed. Pulmonary arteries. The pulmonary arteries divide several times just like the until the pulmonary capillaries are formed. Trachea. The circulation is a low-pressure circulation. Pulmonary. The pulmonary is a low-pressure circulation. Circulation. The pulmonary circulation is a pressure circulation. Low. The pulmonary circulation is a circulation. Low pressure. Is pumped out of the right ventricle at a pressure of 25/0 mmHg. Blood. Blood is pumped out of the right ventricle at a pressure of 25/0 mmHg. By the time blood reaches the pulmonary capillaries, the pressure has fallen to an average of 10 mmHg. The plasma oncotic pressure is 25 mmHg. No fluid moves out of the pulmonary capillaries into the interstitial space through. The blood pumped into the pulmonary circulation at rest is 5L/mi, and blood from the pulmonary capillaries is returned to the atrium of the heart through the pulmonary vein. Left. Blood from the pulmonary capillaries is returned to the left of the heart through the pulmonary vein. Atrium. Blood from the pulmonary capillaries is returned to the left atrium of the heart through the pulmonary vein. From the pulmonary capillaries is returned to the left atrium of the heart through the pulmonary vein. Blood. The artery carries deoxygenated blood. Pulmonary. The pulmonary carries deoxygenated blood. Artery. The pulmonary artery carries blood. Deoxygenated. The carries oxygenated blood. Pulmonary vein. The pulmonary vein carries blood. Oxygenated. The pulmonary vein carries oxygenated blood. About % of the blood flow to the lungs is through the bronchial arteries and veins. About 2% of the blood flow to the is through the bronchial arteries and veins. Lungs. About 2% of the blood flow to the lungs is through the and veins. Bronchial arteries. About 2% of the blood flow to the lungs is through the bronchial arteries and veins. The bronchial artery arises directly from the aorta. Left. The left arises directly from the aorta. Bronchial artery. The left bronchial artery arises directly from the aorta. The bronchial artery arises from the first right intercostal artery. Right. The arises from the first right intercostal artery. Right bronchial artery. The right bronchial artery arises from the first right artery. Intercostal. The right bronchial artery arises from the right intercostal artery. First. The oxygen in the blood that is delivered to the left atrium is about %. 97. The mixing of deoxygenated bronchial venous blood with oxygenated pulmonary venous blood is called physiological shunting. The is very thin, and this makes it easy for gases to diffuse across the membrane. Capillary/alveolar membrane. The large surface area of the is matched by an even larger surface area presented by the capillaries. Alveoli. The large surface area of the alveoli is matched by an even larger surface area presented by the capillaries. The capillaries are micrometer in diameter. 10. The red blood cells are micrometer. 7.2. The red blood cells will cross the pulmonary capillaries in A of single cells. Q. The muscles of respiration can be divided into muscles of inspiration and muscles of expiration. The muscles of respiration can be divided into muscles of inspiration and muscles of expiration. Is a passive process under quiet breathing. Expiration. Expiration is a process under quiet breathing. Passive. The accessory muscles of expiration are the abdominal recti and posterior inferior serratus muscle. There are types of intercostal. 2. The types of intercostal muscles in each of the 11 intercostal spaces are and internal and external. The intercostal run forwards and downwards. External. The external intercostal run and forwards and downwards. The intercostal run backwards and downwards. Internal. The run backwards and downwards and pull the ribs backward and downward. Internal intercostals. The is the dome-shaped musculotendinous partition between the thorax and abdomen. Diaphragm. The diaphragm is the dome-shaped musculotendinous partition between the thorax and abdomen, forming the roof of the abdomen and the floor of the thorax. The bony thorax, the intercostal muscles and the diaphragm form a cone-shaped structure called the thoracic cavity. The distance from the thoracic inlet to the diaphragm is the diameter of the thorax. Vertical. The distance between the posterior surface of the sternum and the anterior surface of the vertebral column is the diameter. Anteroposterior, AP. When the ribs are pulled upward and forward, the AP diameter increases. When the ribs are pulled upward and forward, the AP diameter increases. True. The is capable of vertical excursion of 2.5 cm to 10 cm depending on the depth of breathing. Diaphragm. The diaphragm is capable of vertical excursion of depending on the depth of breathing. 2.5 cm to 10 cm. The diaphragm is capable of vertical excursion of 2.5 cm to 10 cm depending on the depth of breathing. The diaphragm is capable of vertical excursion of 2.5 cm to 10 cm depending on the of breathing. Depth. The diaphragm is capable of vertical excursion of 2.5 cm to 10 cm depending on the depth of breathing. An increase in volume due to diaphragm causes the intrathoracic pressure to be 2 to 6 mmHg less than atmospheric pressure. Thoracic. An increase in thoracic volume due to diaphragm causes the intrathoracic pressure to be 2 to 6 mmHg less than atmospheric pressure. An increase in thoracic volume due to diaphragm causes the intrathoracic pressure to be less than atmospheric pressure. 2 to 6 mmHg. In breathing, contraction of the external intercostal muscles will pull the ribs upwards and move the sternum forward, thereby increasing the AP diameter. Deep. In deep breathing, contraction of the external intercostal muscles will pull the ribs and move the sternum forward, thereby increasing the AP diameter. Upwards. The serves as the air pump that allows for external and internal exchange of gases from the external environment and the internal environment of the body. Respiratory system. The two groups of muscles are for and inspiration and expiration. The two groups of muscles are for inspiration and expiration. The two groups of are for inspiration and expiration. Muscles. Surfactant is a surface acting agent that is responsible for lowering the surface tension of a fluid. A surface acting agent that is responsible for lowering the surface tension of a fluid is called surfactant. The is secreted by the type II alveolar epithelial cells in the lungs. Pulmonary surfactant. The pulmonary is secreted by the type II alveolar epithelial cells in the lungs. Surfactant. The pulmonary surfactant is secreted by the alveolar epithelial cells in the lungs. Type II. The pulmonary surfactant is secreted by the type II epithelial cells in the lungs. Alveolar. The pulmonary surfactant is secreted by the type II alveolar in the lungs. Epithelial cells. Is a lipoprotein complex formed by lipids, especially phospholipids, proteins, and ions. Surfactant. Surfactant is a complex formed by lipids, especially phospholipids, proteins, and ions. Lipoprotein. Surfactant is a lipoprotein formed by lipids, especially phospholipids, proteins, and ions. Complex. Surfactant is a lipoprotein complex formed by lipids, especially phospholipids, proteins, and ions. Surfactant is a lipoprotein complex formed by lipids, especially proteins and ions. Phospholipids. Lack or absence of surfactant in infants causes respiratory distress syndrome or hyaline membrane disease. Is referred to as the volume change in the lungs produced by a unit change of pressure. Compliance. Compliance is the volume change in the lungs produced by a unit change of pressure. Is a measure of the distensibility, elasticity, of the lungs and thoracic structures. Compliance. The extent to which the lungs expand for each unit increase in transpulmonary pressure is called compliance. The total compliance of both lungs together in normal adult human being averages 200 mm of air per centimeter of water transpulmonary pressure. Every time the transpulmonary pressure increases by 1 centimeter of water, the lung volume expands millimeters. 200. When the increase in pressure is removed, the elastic properties of the tissue restore the original volume. When the increase in is removed, the elastic properties of the tissue restore the original volume. Pressure. When the in pressure is removed, the elastic properties of the tissue restore the original volume. Increase. When the increase in pressure is removed, the elastic properties of the restore the original volume. Tissue. In the lungs, exchange of gases occurs only in the respiratory and the alveoli. Bronchioles. In the lungs, exchange of gases occurs only in the respiratory bronchioles and the alveoli. In the lungs, exchange of gases occurs only in the respiratory and bronchioles and alveoli. The anatomical structures that make up the air passages in which no gaseous exchange occurs include the nasal cavity, the pharynx, the larynx, the trachea, the bronchi, the bronchioles. Is the anatomic dead space plus the volume of areas of the lungs that are not taking part in gaseous exchange. Physiologic dead space. The volume of air that moves into and out of the lungs under different conditions can be measured using a spirometer. The process of measuring the volume of air that moves into and out of the lungs under different conditions is known as spirometry. Are the volumes of air breathed by an individual. Lung volumes. The volumes of air breathed by an individual is called lung volumes. Lung volumes are the volumes of air breathed by an individual. Lung volumes are the volumes of breathed by an individual. Air is the volume of air breathed in and out of the lungs during normal quiet respiration. Tidal volume. Tidal volume has a value of 500 ml, 0.5 L. Is the volume of air that can be forcefully inspired after a normal inspiration. Inspiratory reserve volume. Inspiratory reserve volume has an average value of 3300 ml, 3.3 L. Is volume of air that can be forcefully expired after normal expiration. Expiratory reserve volume, of is the volume of air remaining in the lungs even after a most forceful expiration. Residual volume. Residual volume has a value of 1200 ml, 1.2 L. Are the combination of two or more lung volumes. Lung capacities. The combination of two or more lung volumes is referred to as lung capacities. There are types of lung capacities. 4. Is the maximum volume of air that is inspired after normal expiration. Inspiratory capacity, IC. Inspiratory capacity has a value of 3800 ml, 3.8 L. Is the maximum volume of air that can be forcefully expired after a maximal inspiratory effort. Vital capacity. Vital capacity has a value of 4800 ml, 4.8 L. Is the volume of air present in the lungs after an inspiratory effort. Total lung capacity, TLC. Total lung capacity has a value of 6000 ml, 6.0 L. The most common parameters measured in spirometry are vital capacity, VC. Forced vital capacity, FVC. Forced expiratory volume. Maximal voluntary ventilation. Maximal voluntary ventilation is also known as maximum breathing capacity. The normal respiratory rate is times per minute. 12 to 16. The normal rate is 12 to 16 times per minute. Respiratory. The normal respiratory rate is 12 to 16 times per minute. Is the volume of fresh air that enters the alveoli per minute. Alveolar ventilation. The volume of fresh air that enters the alveoli per minute is called alveolar ventilation. Is the process by which oxygen is transferred from the atmosphere to the tissue for use in metabolism. Gaseous exchange. Gaseous exchange is divided into the processes of alveolar ventilation, bringing air into the lungs for transfer of oxygen and carbon dioxide, and pulmonary circulation, bringing blood to the lungs to take up oxygen and excrete carbon dioxide. Gaseous exchange is divided into the processes of alveolar ventilation and pulmonary circulation. Blood leaving the alveolar capillaries returns to the left atrium and is pumped by the left ventricle into the systemic circulation. The process by which atmospheric oxygen gets to the tissues for use in metabolic processes is referred to as oxygen transport. Oxygen transport consists of the following steps. Movement of oxygen from atmospheric air into the alveoli. Inspiration. Diffusion of oxygen from the alveolar sac into the blood in the pulmonary capillaries. Transport of oxygen in the blood from the lungs to the tissues. Delivery of oxygen from the systemic capillary blood to the tissues. The plasma is a poor carrier of oxygen. True. The is a graph that shows the % saturation of hemoglobin at various partial pressures of oxygen. Oxygen dissociation curve. A dash in pH shifts the standard curve to the right. Decrease. A decrease in pH shifts the standard curve to the dash dash. Right. A decrease in shifts the standard curve to the right. pH. A increase in pH shifts the standard curve to the left. True. A decrease in pH shifts the standard curve to the right, while an increase shifts it to the left. This is known as the dash dash. Bower's effect. A reduction in the total binding capacity of hemoglobin to oxygen due to reduced pH is called the dash dash. Root effect. The formation of a dash will release a proton into the plasma. Bicarbonate ion. The formation of a bicarbonate ion will release a dash into the plasma. Proton. The formation of a bicarbonate ion will release a proton into the dash dash. Plasma. 2,3-diphosphoglykosylate or 2,3-DPG is an dash created in erythrocytes during glycolysis. Organophosphate. 2,3-diphosphoglykosylate or 2,3-DPG is an organophosphate created in erythrocytes during dash dash glycolysis. Hemoglobin binds with carbon monoxide 200 to 250 times more readily than with oxygen. True. Carbon dioxide is transported in the blood in three forms. As dissolved CO2-10%. In combination with plasma protein and hemoglobin carbamino compound 30%. As bicarbonate 60%. Dash is the only free anion that can move. Chloride. The only free anion that can move is dash dash. Chloride. Dash is the movement of air into and out of the lungs. Ventilation. Dash is the flow of blood through the lungs. Perfusion. Dash is the influence of nerve cells of the central nervous system and their efferent and afferent fibers on the regulation of breathing. Neural control. Dash occurs when an individual decides to hold his breath or to hyperventilate. Voluntary control of respiration. Voluntary control is carried out under the control of the dash dash. Motor cortex. Dash is carried out under the control of the motor cortex. Voluntary control. The dash are located on the floor of the fourth ventricle in the medulla oblongata. Central chemoreceptors. The central chemoreceptors are located on the floor of the dash ventricle in the medulla oblongata. Fourth dash is a bluish discoloration of the skin and mucous membrane due to presence of a large quantity of deoxygenated hemoglobin in the blood. Cyanosis. In order to prevent the lungs from collapsing, the air breathed by the diver must be supplied under high pressure, that is hyperbaric air, and the condition of breathing air under high pressure is called dash dash. Hyperbarism. The digestive tract includes the mouth, pharynx, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, rectum, and anus. Dash acts on protein and convert it to peptone. Pepsin. Pepsin acts on protein and convert it to dash dash. Peptone. Dash is secreted by the parietal cell of the fundus. Intrinsic factor. Dash a weak fat splitting enzyme. Gastric lipase. Dash is the gastric juice secreted from the parietal cells. Hydrochloric acid, HCl. Hydrochloric acid, HCl, is the gastric juice secreted from the dash dash. Parietal cells. There are three types of cells, namely neck and surface epithelial cell that secrete mucus. The chief cell that secretes enzyme. Parietal or oxyntic cells that secrete hydrochloric acid, HCl, and intrinsic factors. The agents causing secretion of hydrochloric acid. Gastrin is released from pyloric antrum. Acetylcholine is secreted from the vagal ending. Histamine comes from enterochromaffin cell lining the mucosa. GRP means dash dash. Gastric releasing peptide. There are dash phases of gastric secretion. 3. The following are the phases of gastric secretion. Cephalic phase. Gastric phase. Intestinal phase. The dash phase accounts for about 80% of the total secretion of gastric juice. Gastric. The gastric phase accounts for about % of the total secretion of gastric juice. 80. The dash phase occur by activity of the vagus. Cephalic. The cephalic phase occurs by activity of the vagus. The dash has both exocrine and endocrine functions. Pancreas. About -ml of pancreatic juice are secreted daily. 1,500 is secreted by the liver cells, liver lobules, and stored in the gallbladder. Bile. Bile is secreted by the liver lobules, and stored in the gallbladder. Liver cells. Bile is stored in the gallbladder. Is the chief phospholipids present in the bile. Lecithin. In bile is solubilized in micelles. Cholesterol. Stores, releases and makes the bile into concentration by active reabsorption of Na plus NHCO3-, passively by the reabsorption of water. Gallbladder. There are two types of gallstone: cholesterol stone and pigment stone. Is the process by which food brought into the mouth is broken down into smaller pieces by the teeth. Chewing. The condition in which I experience difficulty in swallowing is called dysphagia. Difficulty in emptying the food from the esophagus to stomach due to absence of peristalsis in the lower third or failure of cardiac sphincter to relax. Achalasia. Functions of the stomach include these. Storage organ. Beginning of protein digestion by pepsin occurs in the stomach. It makes food into chyme by propulsive, mixing and retropulsive movement. The acid in the stomach convert cane sugar to fructose and glucose. Occurs mainly due to gastroduodenal plexus cycle caused by digestive peristalsis of the stomach. Gastric emptying. The movement that are seen in small intestine are as follows: segmental contraction, peristalsis contraction, pendular contraction, villi movement. Functions of the small intestine. It contains pancreatic bile and intestinal secretion. Completion of digestion and absorption of digested food occurs in the small intestine. Presence of villi facilitates absorption of digested food. The duodenal mucosa secretes gastrointestinal hormones like secretin, CCK, VIP, motilin. Peyer's patches in the ileum are lymphoid organs which helps in immunity. Functions of the large intestine. Absorption of water and electrolytes. Formation of faces. Secretion of mucus to lubricate the faces. The bacteria fluoride synthesis vitamin B and vitamin K. Is the act of passing faces. Defecation. The process of defecation can be subdivided into main components. The part under the defecation reflexes. The part under voluntary control. There are types of defecation reflexes. 2. There are two types of defecation reflexes. The intrinsic defecation reflex. The parasympathetic defecation reflex. Is produced by G cells of the pyloric antral mucosa. Gastrin. Is secreted from the duodenal mucosal. Motilin. Motilin is secreted from the duodenal mucosal. Motilin consists of amino acid. 22. The epithelial cells contains 4 enzymes: lactase, maltase, and isomaltose. Sucrase. The epithelial cells contains 4 enzymes: lactase, sucrase, and isomaltose maltase. The epithelial cells contains 4 enzymes: lactase, sucrase, maltase, and isomaltose. Is a major constituent of intercellular connective tissue of meat. Collagen. Absorption of glucose is called a transport. Secondary active. Absorption of glucose is called a secondary active transport because the energy for transport is provided indirectly by the active transport of Na out of the cell.